I want to ask you, sir, one final question. What do you want to say to Americans who didn't support you in this campaign?
I'm going to treat you every bit as well as I have treated the greatest MAGA supporters. There's never been anything like MAGA in the history of this country. These people are so dedicated to making America great again. It's very simple. And I'm going to treat them just the same as I treat MAGA. We're going to treat everybody good. We want success for our country. We want safety for our country. You know, our country is under threat, as you know. We have a tremendous threat militarily because of the power of weapons and weaponry. It's a tremendous threat. Nobody talks about it, but it's a tremendous threat. I want to treat everybody the same. I want to treat them well. And at the end of this 4 years, and I have a big head start because I was there for 4 years fairly recently. A lot of bad things were done during the 4 years that I wasn't there, and mostly in what they've done in terms of our reputation overseas. Our reputation is so bad, so shot. I got to bring it back, and I also have to bring back civilization to our country. Our country is a crime pot, and we have to get rid of crime. We have so many things to do. We have to do the prices. We have to do all of that. But we have to get the criminals out of our country.
The relationship between Trump and the mainstream media has been one of the most contentious and polarizing in modern political history. Love him or hate him, it's undeniable that Trump's presidency changed how news was reported and consumed. But how did this rocky relationship form? And what were the consequences of the battles waged between Trump and the press? Before entering politics, though, Donald Trump was a media mogul and a reality TV star. We all know this. His show, The Apprentice, and his larger-than-life persona made him a household name, and media coverage during this era was mostly favorable, focusing on his wealth, flamboyance, and celebrity status. But Trump's early disdain for the press was evident even back then.
The press. Where inside the department and inside the FBI is that tension in your view?
Well, two things. One, in terms of what the American people voted for, I don't really know if they all appreciated that part of his campaign speech. You hear that when he's at his rallies or when he's being interviewed by some extremist podcaster. But all the polling I've seen about why people voted for Trump are all about the price of eggs. I mean, I've never heard so much about the price of eggs in my life.
Which, by the way, on the price of eggs, the tariff, 70% of voters understand that tariffs make eggs more expensive.
Yes.
So I'm not sure I buy the price of eggs thing myself.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about eggs next time.
So, right. So in terms of, being the retribution and going after the deep state, let's think about it a while. And you alluded to this at the top of the hour, which is that if you really divert the resources of the Department of Justice and the FBI into investigating this very lengthy list, Kash Patel has a list in his book. Other people have created lists of enemies. Who is actually going to be engaged in the work of the FBI? Who is going to be investigating international narcotics trafficking, international human trafficking? Who's going to be investigating other white-collar crime that does not involve Donald Trump? Who is going to be investigating terrorism cases, international terrorism cases, international espionage cases, cases involving China and Iran and Russia? It takes massive amounts of resources to launch investigations, particularly on the scale he's talking about, and particularly when there's actually no there there.
Right.
So you're talking about, casting about for anything. And so
he often accused reporters of misrepresenting his business, dealings, or personal life. But it wasn't until his presidential campaign that the simmering distrust exploded into open hostility. Trump's 2016 campaign marked the beginning of a contentious relationship with the press. Many mainstream media outlets dismantled and dismissed his candidacy as a joke, underestimating his appeal to large segments of the population. This coverage, often dripping with condescension, inadvertently boosted Trump's visibility and appeal. Take, for example, the immense amount of free media coverage he received. According to the New York Times, Trump earned nearly $2 billion worth of free press during the primary season alone.
It's Elon Musk, who we've seen, of course, by his side on the campaign trail and now in the transition, but also increasingly in the middle of a lot of these conversations with foreign leaders and in the conversations about foreign conflicts. What do you make of that?
Well, it's almost like Musk has become vice president. I don't know where J.D. Vance is on this trip, but Elon Musk, to this point, remains a private citizen, and he has no governmental authority. He may have extraordinary influence over Donald Trump, but the rubber meets the road at noon on the 20th of January. Musk is going to have to decide which way to jump, and at that point, I think people will have to make a judgment whether there's undue influence or anything else. But right now, look, these people are private citizens. Let's keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Elon Musk publicly on X, I think it was yesterday, publicly was pressuring Donald Trump to pick Lutnick as Treasury Secretary, along with the esteemed Cat Turd. And as goes Cat Turd on X, so goes Middle America.
Networks often broadcast his rallies, providing him with platform candidates could dream of. But his campaign gained traction, media narratives often shifted. Words like misogynist and racist and unfit for office became commonplace descriptors in coverage of Trump. We all know that the mainstream media has always lied about this, and the mainstream media has always been corrupt, so it is definitely not a surprise to any of us. We've seen how they've always put Trump down and always praised Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Impossible to fact check Donald Trump in real time, but there were a series of lies that Donald Trump spewed throughout the course of that speech that we were listening to. Lies about immigrants in this country, lies about immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, saying there are 30,000 of them. That is not true. Those that are in Springfield, Ohio, as has been repeatedly said by officials in that city and in that state, is that they have been there legally with the right permit to be there. He has said lie after lie about millions of criminals coming into this country. Again, people who have come into this country do not by the millions, have criminal records. That was a lie. Donald Trump, again, showing, saying that he did not start any wars. This was a president who throughout his time had more drone strikes than previous presidents. He also killed Iranian generals in third countries that brought us to the brink of war. The list of lies that Donald Trump spewed throughout the 45 minutes that we are listening to it is one part of why we wanted to show that to our viewers, but also more importantly, the rambling, the hate, the xenophobia, the homophobia that has been hallmarks of the Republican Party over the last several years were on display throughout the course of today, culminating with the president today, who spoke in this bloodlust language about what he would do if he came back as president one more time. And we felt it was important for people to hear it because he has billed this part of his closing message. Rick, I want to...
And us Trump supporters, we often saw this as proof of media bias. But one of the defining moments of Trump's presidency was the introduction of the term fake news. This label wasn't new, but Trump weaponized it like no one before him. From CNN to the Post, Washington Post, New York Times, Trump attacked major outlets for what he deemed unfair or dishonest reporting. His supporters quickly adopted the term, using it to dismiss stories critical of Trump, regardless of the validity. For many, the media's coverage of Trump seemed disproportionately negative. Studies from organizations like the Pew Research Center found that only 5% of stories about Trump during his first year in office were positive. This disparity fueled the perception that the press wasn't reporting objectively, but rather functioning as an opposition force. Like I've said, they've always been against President Trump. They've been against Trump since the beginning, and this is why he's in office, to make things for America good again, to make things for America great again. It's time for Trump to bring us back to number one in the world and in the country. Try to sweep his positive work under the rug. They just can't stop the corruption. But while Trump certainly escalated tensions with his rhetoric, the mainstream media also played a role in deepening the divide.
This weekend trip where we saw him in France, meeting with Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, meeting with President Zelensky from Ukraine. Scott, I know I talked to you the day it was happening, but it was striking because he is not the sitting president. He is the president-elect right now, and yet here he was meeting with these world leaders and really looking quite presidential over the weekend.
Yeah, the country of the United States has moved on. The world has moved on. Donald Trump doesn't take office until January, but you can see the rest of the world is already treating him like he is the power center of the United States. And so I'm glad he went. This cathedral reopening is a huge deal to so many people around the world, Catholics, Christians. It's a historical moment. It was also a chance for him to talk to some of our biggest allies, people he's going to have to be coordinating with on some of these problems that Joe Biden is leaving behind. Donald Trump is hitting the ground running. I mean, he's already out doing the things that we need him to do to get the country back on track. So between his interview with Meet the Press, you can see here that Donald Trump is not going to have a passive presidency. This is going to be an active start to this presidency. And the rest of the world responds to leadership. We've not had a strong president. We have one now. Everybody knows it.
We call this a divided nation, but it's only because of President Biden and Kamala Harris. They're the ones currently in office, not President Trump. President Trump has been trying to make things great again, while President Biden and Kamala Harris have always done the wrong things, have always gone south with President Trump. For example, networks like MSNBC and CNN always are in pursuit of ratings. Many outlets always leaning to sensationalism. Constant drumbeat of negative coverage alienated Trump supporters while reinforcing their belief that the media was out to get them. Consider the reporting about the Russia investigation. Many outlets treated allegations of collusion between Trump's campaign and Russia as a near certainty, instead of it being an investigation. No one even thought about it, and no one even talked about how it's not even true. That Russia never colluded with President Trump in the first place, and that was all just a big lie. A witch hunt, like I always say.
Have to bring down crime. People have to be able to walk across the street and buy a loaf of bread without being shot. And that's going to happen. But what I say to them is, I love you, and we're going to all work together, and we're going to bring it together. And you know what's going to bring it together? Success. I saw that just prior to COVID coming in, I had polls that were the highest anyone. McLaughlin and Fabrizio said, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, if they came back from the dead.
You know, while the Russia investigation uncovered really a lot of wrongdoings from many individuals on both sides of the aisle, it fell short of proving the sweeping collusion narrative that many media figures had implied. For Trump and his supporters, this became a rallying cry against the press, that they were always corrupt, that they're always against President Trump, and they're never for the truth. Trump didn't just react to the media attacks, he actively cultivated the conflict with the press as a strategy. He positioned himself as a victim of media bias. He was able to galvanize his base. His rallies frequently featured chants of CNN sucks or Christ News Network, this is fake news, and Trump encouraged this sentiment, knowing it would deepen his connection with supporters who distrusted traditional institutions already. Social media played a crucial role in bypassing traditional outlets. Trump's Twitter account became his primary method of communication before he got banned. But luckily, Elon Musk brought it back again, and that's why President Trump and him are very close together and are going to make America great again, just the way it's supposed to be happening. This unfiltered approach often created controversies, but also ensured his message reached his base without media distortion. The Trump media feud didn't hurt Trump's relationship with the press. It damaged public trust in journalism itself. I, for one, don't even trust the mainstream media anymore. And polls show that trust in media institutions has declined significantly since Trump's election. This isn't solely Trump's doing. By openly taking sides against Trump, journalists blurred the line between reporting and activism. Many media figures openly called Trump a threat to democracy, an existential danger, a terrorist. They reinforced the belief that the press was no longer neutral and that they were against Trump all the time, every day, non-stop. Meanwhile, alternative media outlets, many of them fiercely pro-Trump, gained prominence. These platforms, such as OANN, capitalize as the trust of the media and mainstream media outlets. And this is the big lesson that the mainstream media has to take for the future. The relationship between Trump and the media offers important lessons for journalists and politicians. For journalists, the Trump era highlighted that they need to be rigorous fact-checking and they cannot be just, promoting fake lies. The perception of bias, whether real or imagined, undermined their credibility. Moving forward, media outlets must prioritize transparency and accountability to rebuild this trust.
I might be deported because I'm a naturalized citizen. And Stephen Miller, who is Donald Trump's deputy chief of staff, has said that they're going to embark on a denaturalization program. So I could be deported, my citizenship could be taken away, and my children could be deported because they have birthright citizenship. So this is not what the country voted for. Let's be very clear. Americans voted for Trump because of groceries, because of lowering costs.